Welcome to today's video. I am Maz. I hope you're having a splendid day. So today I will give a short long-term review of my 2021 Volkswagen ID3 Pro Performance First Edition Max. That is a long name. So I've owned this car since December 2020 and I've driven it for around 12,000 kilometers or so. And I know with the current state that we have in the car industry, it is a bit difficult to get hold of cars, or much difficult to get hold of cars. I don't know exactly the situation for the ID3 where you live, but here in Sweden it is rather long lead times before you get your car delivered. But I thought I'll sum up my 1.5 years or so of ownership of this car then, and I will be parting away from it with it in 2 days time. I have 2 other cars potentially coming in. Let's talk about that briefly in a second. So I thought I'll structure today's video in different sections. We will talk about the exterior, we will talk about the interior, we will talk about the driving impressions and driving feel, and I will cover the range briefly because I don't want to go in too much in detail in range, because range is dependent so much on where you live, how you drive, the tire sizes, the wheel size, etc, etc. So we will cover that, but maybe not that much in detail. And then to wrap the video up, I will discuss a little bit what the type of driving I have been doing, if another different type of car would have made any difference or not, and so on. More or less, is this car for you or not type of section then. So that was that. And what I was coming to then is, so I have a Mustang Mach-e standard range rear wheel drive on order, and I do also have a Tesla Model 3 Performance on order as well. We will see which one of those cars we will go for. One is obviously much more expensive than the other, at least for me and my situation. So we will see which one of those we will go for. So stay tuned for that. Do remember to subscribe to see those videos. And as you may or may not know, we have a 2019 Mazda MX-5 30th anniversary in the garage, which we do have videos on as well, track days, modifications, and so on, and car detailing in general. So do subscribe if you'd like that type of content. And if you like today's video, give it a big thumbs up. But with that said, let's get on with the exterior parts of the car. The first thing you see is the moonstone gray color. In the beginning I thought it was a bit dull, but I think it actually suits this car rather nicely, and together with the Sanye 20-inch wheels and with the tinted windows we got on the first edition Max, I think as a whole package it looks rather cool, actually. Can I say that? I don't know. I didn't like this car from the beginning that much, but it has actually grown on me with regards to the design cues, and from certain angles I think it actually really looks cool, but from certain other angles I think still it is not that nice looking. Obviously it is not a Ferrari, so we cannot have that type of expectations, but you get the idea. And also I think this car, together with the Ioniq 5 and cars like the Kia EV6, they do stand out, but they do not look dorky because they're electric and they need to have weird shapes and colors and blue stuff on the panels, etc. I think it is actually a car that does stand out in actually comparing it to other models from Volkswagen and so on. It looks rather special or unique, if we want to call it like that. And also, this car being the first edition Max, we have the Matrix LED lights, which do enhance the look of the car as well, and also they do work really well during nighttime. I haven't driven that much during nighttime, but the times I have used it and having the high beam on, and it automatically adjusts your lighting, and it works really well. So that is an option you might want to consider if you drive a lot during nighttime. But again, then all in all, the design cues on the outside of the car, it has grown on me. It is again then not a Ferrari, but if you want to have a car taking you from A to B but want to stand out from the rest of the crowd, or want something that looks a little bit special, maybe the ID3 is the design for you then. Let's talk about what I like the least with this car, and that is the interior. We will cover what I mean in a bit, but let's start with the positives. Being an electric car based on an electric platform, we have a great amount of volume and space. I'm not that big, but I'm 167 centimeters short, so I have a bunch of space in the driver's seats and behind myself, and taller passengers do fit nicely behind me. And on this first edition Max, we have a panoramic glass roof, so it feels really roomy and nice in here. It is actually a nice place to be in. It doesn't feel cramped. We have a bunch of light coming in, specifically with the roof as well. And also the trunk or the boot, we have enough space for my needs at least, consider it being similar size as a Volkswagen Golf, and we can fold the seats to have a bunch more space if need be. And also in this car I do have the upgraded seats then, which came with the Max Edition. So the Max Edition was a fully loaded car. They are comfortable seats, they are fully electric, we have massaging function, but I think they look really boring and bad, to be honest. The cloth on these make the car look like something from the 80s if you just look at the seats. If you do look at the Cupra Born, which is more or less similar car, that interior feels much and looks much nicer compared to the ID3. And also the materials used, the plastics, the color combinations, and all the black plastic trimming, it really does not feel like a car which back then when I got it was around 60,000 euros then list price, or somewhere around there. Comparing it to my G20 BMW 330e, which I had in 2020, that interior was much nicer and the price of them was similar. But if you would have looked at the interiors side by side, there would have been no comparison and no contest at all, hands down. And the infotainment system in this car sucks. I only use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I don't want to use the infotainment if I don't have to. The capacitive buttons are, as every reviewer says, they do suck. But you get used to it and how to maneuver them, but it is not a nice implementation in my opinion. And on this car we do have a head-up display, which is really nice to have. Comparing it to my BMW, the BMW's was much nicer, as we got the graphics in a different way, and I thought that was much better implemented. But having a head-up display is always much nicer than not having anything at all. And yeah, that is that with regards to the interior. So we are on the road, and I just want to briefly cover a topic which I didn't mention earlier in the video, and that is if I've experienced any issues with the car. And unfortunately I have done so. Name one car that I have had which have not had any issues, but that's the way it is. So the car has been in 3 times in 3 different occasions for swapping out parts. 2 of the times have been electric components, PCM and a camera module, because they couldn't update the car, so they had to make hardware changes in order to be able to update the car. And now I have version 2.3 of the firmware, if you're familiar with that, and that is the latest version which Volkswagen has for the ID3 at least. And the 3rd time I had the car in, I had some clunking sound, and I was thinking it must be the sway bar or sway bar end links or somewhere regarding that. And once I got the car back, and obviously it was then the sway bar end links which they had to swap out. So if you do have an earlier version of an ID3 and you have experienced sound with regards to that, take it to the dealer, and they will most likely cover it under warranty then, even though you might have put some miles on the car. My car had, I can't remember at that time, I think it was 6,000 kilometers or so, but they swapped it out without any questions asked. So that is that. And the software itself, as I mentioned, is 2.3. It is still a little bit buggy. Sometimes I do get warning messages out of the blue when I'm starting the car, but then I go to the gym and come out after 1 hour, sit in the car and drive off, no warnings. So yeah, that's the way it is. And also the infotainment system and so on is still slow, and no illumination for the volume or heat and so on, the heat settings. But I don't think a firmware change will cover that part. So now let's talk about how the car is to drive. Let's talk about the driving cabin experience, so to speak. It is light and roomy here, as I mentioned earlier. We don't have any blind spots on this car. I do also have blind spot monitoring, which helps out. The rear window maybe is a little bit on the smaller side, but I can still see out. However, if the middle headrest is up, it actually makes your view backwards a little bit difficult if all 3 are up. I do also have other comfort features in this car. Then we have the head-up display, we have the blind spot monitoring, as I mentioned, we have a lane keep assist, so the car drives by itself for a certain amount of period, then I need to hold my hands on the wheels. We have lane keep assist, but that is not a good thing always. It is quite intrusive, and if you want to disable it, you have to do it every time you get into the car, so it's nothing that you can switch off and just leave it there. And again, then the seats are really comfortable. I have the upgraded seats with support for the thighs, and they're fully electric, so I can have them in the position I want without any issues. So all in all, from a driving aspect of things, it is a really nice place to be in. And also then this car has the DCC, so that's the dynamic chassis, or adaptive chassis, sorry. So in its comfort mode, it is actually quite comfortable, even though I have 20-inch wheels. Obviously it would have been more comfortable with a 18-inch wheels with a tire with a higher profile, but for me, with the DCC and the 20-inch wheels, it's a nice compromise with regards to driving comfort and performance and visual aspects then. So all in all, a really nice experience as a daily car for commuting then. But from a driving dynamics, maybe everything is not that great. I mean, this is not a corner carving car, so if you do push it in the corners, you do feel the weight, you do feel that it leans and pushes. But again, then 99% driving this type of vehicle won't be pushing it. And also the brakes, I do feel sometimes, time to time, then if they are not that confidence inspiring, they don't give that much confidence. But again, then for a daily commute, they work. But I don't know exactly where it starts biting. I don't know if there is some regenerative part of it and then the actual brake bites. But I don't like the brake feel at all in this car. And again, then I'm coming from an MX-5 where everything is tactile. The brakes are awesome, and the steering feel and so on. But everything vibrates and a lot of sound. So it's the complete opposite to this car, we could say. And I just want to briefly cover the range. And as I mentioned, everything is individual and it depends on where you live and how you drive, the tire size and so on. But during winter period, I'm seeing somewhere around 180 to 240 kilometers until depleted battery with the type of driving I do. And during summertime now, it's showing, let's see, we have 66% battery. It's showing 276 kilometers until depleted battery. And that is again done with the type of driving I'm doing. AC is off at the moment. If I turn it on, it shows 243 kilometers. For me, that is not an issue with the type of driving again I do. I don't do a lot of highway miles, but obviously during winter period and also during the summer period, the range would be much shorter if I do highway miles and if it's cold or muddy or snowy and so on. And also one thing I want to mention, with the 2.3 version of the firmware, if the car is plugged in and you're charging it and you want to preheat the cabin and charging at the same time, obviously, the car will not preheat the battery to the optimum temperature. I don't know why that is. It could be that it consumes quite a lot of energy to actually preheat the battery, preheat the cabin, and obviously then to charge the car. So not to blow fuses at folks' places. Maybe Volkswagen then decided not to preheat the battery as well. I'm not sure. If you know, leave a comment down below on why you think that is. But that's what I have experienced, and the consequence of that is that with the short driving distances I do, it is actually consuming quite a lot of energy to preheat the battery, and the car obviously doesn't know how far I will drive, so it is doing its best to get the battery up to temperature, and therefore it is consuming quite a lot of energy while doing so. Hopefully in a coming firmware update, at least one can select to have the preheating of the battery or not, depending then on what type of fuses and so on you have at your house, so you have that option at least. And while we are on the subject of winter driving, I just wanted to talk about how it is to drive during winter, as this car is a rear-wheel driven car, and I have been driving with studless Nordic winter tires. So those type of tires are specifically made for the conditions we have here in the Nordics. It has worked really well, nothing to mention as such. Apart from that, the traction control kicks in rather soon or quickly and abruptly as such, but that is not an issue unless you hoon it or you want to hoon it because you cannot do it. You cannot turn off the traction control either. So, but again, then if you do drive like a normal human being, there will be no issues driving this car during winter period as such. To my conclusions then, so is this car for you or not? I will try to speak of it as an is an electric car for you or not, maybe more in that term, because in my use case, I do have a lot of short distance driving. I drop the kids off school, I pick them up from school, I go grocery shopping, I go to the hardware store, I go to the gym. I don't do that many miles on the highway, maybe to the country house and back. But in general, it is shorter distances. We are speaking of maybe 5-10 minutes max distance driving than before stopping. And for me, an electric vehicle fits that bill really nicely, because we don't have to worry about transmissions getting warm, the engine getting warm, diffs getting warm, oils getting warm, etc. With an electric vehicle, you just sit in it, hopefully you have preheated it, it heats up quickly and so on during winter time then, or it cools down during summertime nicely. It is a really difficult tool to beat, in my opinion, with the type of driving I do, and this car in specific has been a really nice tool for that type of driving I have been doing. So maybe that's something for you to consider. You might not need to have 500 horsepower, maybe 300 is enough, and I promise you 300 for 97% of you out there is well enough. This only has then 204 horsepower, rear wheel driven. It is fully sufficient for those 30 to 60, 70, 80, 90 kilometers an hour accelerations you need to do in your daily driving or daily commute. It is not the fastest car, it is not the quickest car, but it is fully sufficient for that type of driving. In my opinion, many of you might argue that for long distance driving, an electric vehicle is more suitable, because nowadays it is much cheaper to fill up the tank on an electric vehicle compared to a combustion engine car. I won't argue with that. But for me, and in my use case, an electric vehicle for the shorter distances, from an environmental perspective and also from a pocket perspective, it fits and it works, because an electric vehicle is similar to a combustion engine car for shorter driving, a lot of start-stop and so on. Obviously, the consumption will be higher, but again, then I can charge at home, I can charge during the night. I have always a full tank if I need to. So for me, an electric vehicle fits that bill really well, and specifically this car has then again worked really well for that. But I do have an ego then, so that is why I have ordered the Tesla Model 3 Performance, and we also have the Mach-e, because I do like the styling of those cars more, and also the performance of the Model 3 then is something I would like to have as well. So that is why I am changing, and yeah, that is that. But for me, an electric vehicle with the type of driving I am doing, anytime for me. So if you have any questions at all, just hit me up in the comment sections below and I will try to answer them the best I can. If you did like today's video, give it a thumbs up, and also do remember to subscribe to the channel for future content, and also if you do like the content. But with that said, I'll be seeing you on the next one.